This case will walk you through the Gates Plaza case study from 2018. When we create a new property, we are first going to select a mixed-use office retail. So we're going to go down, select office retail, and then hit next. And this is Gates Plaza with a analysis begin of January 2018. So we're going to go back to 2018. Select January, and it's going to have a hold period of 6 years and 6 months. This is in Seattle, Washington. And then we can go ahead and hit finish. And now we're going to start entering our inputs. So this building is 30,000 square feet. So we're going to enter 30,000 for our square footage. And that is the only thing we need to add on our property description, since we've already added the analysis begin and the hold period. Then we're going to get into our inflation. So we're going to select our market, and you should have this part blacked out. If you don't, you can go into modeling policy and we can change the inflation to be expressed in nominal growth factors and not allow inflation in year one. So now you'll see that I have 2018 grayed out. So starting in 2019, we have 3% for general inflation and then 4% beyond that. So just the 3% in 2019, and that's going to be the same for all of these. We're going to change that to 4. We're going to change this to 3 and then this to 4. And then we're going to be using an inflation month of our analysis date. So we keep that the same. And then we're going to change our recovery to calendar recovery using fiscal inflation. So we're going to change that, calendar recovery using fiscal inflation. Okay, then we're going to get into our general vacancy tab, still under the market. And we are going to add 5% in for a general vacancy allowance. We want to ensure that both of these boxes are still activated. And under modeling policy in the general tab, we want to make sure that we have the calculation of vacancy being done monthly. Let's go ahead and close out of that. Then we're going to get into our credit loss. And so credit loss and vacancy kind of go hand in hand. Vacancy would be that there is no actual tenant in there. Credit loss would be a tenant is still in there, but just not able to pay their rent. So sometimes we do want to take into account some level of credit loss, just if we feel that there may be some issues with a certain tenant. And so for this, we're going to do a 1% of the potential gross revenue. Okay, then we're going to actually get into our investment tab, and that is going to be where we enter our purchase price. And the purchase price for this is $18,700,000. We also want to enter a sales agent fee of 1.5% of the purchase. And so we're going to get over here into our closing costs section. If we click here, we can add a record, and we are going to call this sales agent fee. And that's going to be 1.5% of the purchase price. So our how input should remain percent of purchase price. And then we will change this to 1.5. Okay, then we're going to go into our valuation, and looking at the property resale tab, we want to use a cap NOI 12 months after sale, which is what the default is. So we don't actually have to change that. And we're going to make the cap rate a 7% cap. There will be some closing costs that we want to take into account. So we're going to scroll all the way to the end and make our adjustment. So we're going to click on this tab, and we're going to add one adjustment, and we're going to call these selling costs or closing costs, whatever you want to name them. And it's a fixed amount of $1,044,260. Once you have that done, go ahead and hit OK. And then we're going to get into our present value calculation where we're going to input the discount rate of 15%. And we want to make sure that the method, again, stays annualized. So go ahead and hit save if you haven't saved it recently. From here, we're going to go back into our revenues. And we're going to add in some miscellaneous revenues. And this is going to be for overtime HVAC. So here we're going to say overtime HVAC. And for overtime HVAC, we're going to get $20,000 per year. And this is going to be 25% fixed. So what this likely is if a tenant is on a certain budget, but they go over that budget, they're required to reimburse in that amount. That would be my assumption as to what this revenue source is. Then we're going to get into our recoverable operating expenses. So go ahead and hit expenses. And then we are going to add in 3 recoverable expenses. The first one is our common area maintenance. And for this, it's going to be a fixed amount of $309,894. And that is a per year fee. And it's going to be 30% fixed. Now, again, since this is recoverable, we're going to leave recoverable at 100%. Our next expense is going to be our real estate taxes. And these are going to be paid out in different points in time. So we're going to select our ellipses here. And we are going to pay out $37,500 every February. And then clear this out. And then in May, $37,500. Zero that out. In August, $37,500. And then finally in November, $37,500. For our inflationary rate, we don't want to have it as the expense rate. We're actually going to have it increase by 2%. So down here, we're going to enter 2, and then we're going to enter 2 again. Because these were 2 different values, it's not going to pull directly across, but you will want to make sure that 2% is consistent throughout your numbers here. Okay, then we're going to add an administrative and general expense. So we have admin and general, and that's $25,000 per year. Last recoverable expense we're going to add is our insurance. And that is also going to be a fixed amount of $657,236. 100% fixed, 100% recoverable. Then we're going to have one non-recoverable expense, and this is our property management fee. So we're going to add another record here. We're going to call this property management. And this is going to be 3% of the effective gross revenue. So we're going to find percent of effective gross revenue, and this is going to be 3%. Now we're going to make sure that this is 0, since this is not a recoverable expense. And we're also going to put in a max limit of $5,000 per month. And so if you scroll over to where you see the limit section, we're going to hit max, and it's going to be dollars per month. And then we're going to put in 5,000, meaning we will never pay more than $5,000 per month for the property management company on this property. Okay, we're going to get into capital reserves now. And so get into our capital expenditures. And we're going to add 2 records here. One is for our structural reserves. So anything that structurally might need to be repaired or replaced, that's going to be 10 cents per rentable area. So 0.10. And then capital improvements are going to be spread 75,000 across the first quarter in 2023 with no inflation. So we're going to get into our ellipses here, and we're going to find 2023. And we're going to spread 75,000 across the first 3 quarters. So that means 25,000 all the way down, and then we'll zero out these other numbers. And we do not want any inflation, so we're going to go down here and select no inflation. So again, $75,000 spread across the first quarter of 2023 looks like this. And then we'll call this our capital improvements. Okay, now we're going to get into our market tab, and we're going to define our market leasing profiles. So under our market, we're going to get into market leasing, and we're going to change our default profile to the 5-year market. And this is going to be a 5-year term with a 50% renewal, 4 months vacant, charging a rent of $18.50 if they are new, and if they are renewing, $18. And then we're going to see fixed step increases of 3%. And our recoveries are going to be a base year stop. Tenant improvements are going to be $4 per area if they are new, and $2 per area if they are renewing. Leasing commissions are a fixed percent, 5% if it's a new lease, and 2.5% if it is a renew lease. Then we're going to add another market profile, and this one is going to be called our retail market. So for our retail market, we're going to have 5 years as the term, 75% as the renewal, 4 months vacant, $23 per square foot for the base rent, and it's going to be the same as if they renew. We will have a fixed step increase of $1 per square foot per year. And our recoveries are going to be net. For tenant improvements, they will get $5 per area if they are a new tenant, and they will get $0 if they are a renew tenant. We're going to have the exact same leasing commissions, so we're going to select fixed percent, 5% if it's a new lease, and 2.5% if it's a renew lease. Then finally, we have a roof that we are renting out, and so we're going to select a roof profile. So we're going to add a record here, call this roof profile. And this is going to have a 10-year term with a 50% renewal, 0 months vacant, and a base rent of $30,000 per year. So we want to change this to dollars per year. And the renew is going to be the same as the new, so we don't need to change that. And we actually don't need to change anything else in here, except for our recoveries. We want to make sure that they have none. So everything else should be none. It's just the $30,000 per year as the rent, and everything else should be as it is. Okay, so now we're going to enter our information from our rent roll, and we're also going to see all recoverable expenses are set to net as the recovery calculation. So that means that we are going to be asked to make a group. And so our recovery group here, we're going to add in a CAM plus 15 admin recovery structure. And so what that's going to look like is we got into our tenant tab recoveries. We're going to add this record and call it CAM plus 15% admin. And our modeling policy should be at no gross up. So we're going to make sure that that's at 0 because we weren't told any sort of gross up. And what this is going to include is going to be all of our expenses that are recoverable. So our common area, our real estate taxes, admin in general, and our insurance. Now, for our common area maintenance, we are going to be adding in an administrative fee. So here we're going to type in 15%. So when we get to our tenant tab, we can easily apply this particular recovery structure. Okay, so we're going to get back into our tenant tab and get into our rent roll. So we have 5 different tenants. So I'm going to add 5 different records. And our first tenant is Rainforest Inc. Our next tenant is Bauburn and Associates. Then we have Cobain Gift Shop. Emergency Services Roof. And Estrella Coffee. So this is suite 100, 120, 250, roof, and 205. The lease type here is an office, and then this is also an office. This one is retail. This one is our antenna, and then this one's also retail. So it should be office, office, retail, antenna, retail. Our area for this first tenant is 22,000. Next one is 3160. Next one is 2200. We're not going to put any square feet for the roof. And then 2640 for our last tenant. And if you look down here, you'll see that 0% is our remaining. So that means we've entered in the correct numbers to equate to that 30,000 square feet that we had entered at the beginning. So we are going to have a available date. It's going to be on a specified date. These are all going to be on a specified date. So we're going to go ahead and change all of these because their leases have started before the analysis begins. So we're going to say specified date, specified date, specified date, and specified date. And so this tenant started on the 1st of 2016. This one started on September 1st, 2014. This one started on July 1st, 2014. This one on January 1st, 2014. And this one on November 1st of 2014. And we want these to start when they were available. So you'll see that those dates are just getting pulled over to this available date section. The first tenant is on a 4-year lease. Next tenant is a 4-year 1 month. Next tenant is a 9-year. Then we have a 10-year and a 5-year. We can go ahead and scroll over here to put in our base rents. So first we have $16 for our base rent, and then $15, $21. This is a flat 30,000, so we're going to change this to dollars per year. 30,000. And then we have $21 per square foot per year. Now, we do have a 4% fixed step increase on Cobain gift shop. So we're going to find Cobain and we're going to see the fixed step increases, and that is a percent of 4. Okay, so then we have our recovery structures, and we can go ahead and get into our recoveries. Since we do not have any, oh, we do have one that has a percentage rent lease, and so that's Estrella Coffee. And so we're going to find our percentage rent, and this is going to be percent, and they are going to pay 5% sales amount of 500,000 with a natural break point. Okay, then we're getting into our recovery structures. For rainforest, they're going to be a stop amount per area, and that amount is $4.75. Robert and Associates is going to be stop amount per area at $4.50. And Cobain is going to be that CAM plus 15 admin. So it should be at the very bottom. Our emergency services should have none. So we're going to change this to none. And Estrella Coffee is also going to be that CAM plus 15%. Okay. Then we're going to look at our market percent reabsorption option. And so that's going to be the last thing that we're going to enter in for this tenancy. And so that's going to be the reabsorption option of how likely are they to renew. And so we're going to do renew probability override, and that's going to be 50%. Whoops, rainforest is going to be 50%. And then Auburn is going to be 50%. And 75% for Cobain. 50% for the roof. And 75% for Estrella. Okay, and we also want to make sure that our market leasing profiles are lining up with exactly the type of tenant that we have. And so we want to make sure that the rainforest, they are an office, so they're going to be a 5-year market. Auburn is also an office, but Estrella is a retail. Cobain is a retail, and then the emergency services is our roof. So we want to make sure that those are all aligning. So from here, we just want to make sure that we've checked all of our work, that everything is in line with what we need it to be. The way that they have this structured, it is a little bit confusing. So you may want to go back and just make sure that all of your numbers are matching up. But that is the last input that we will need for this particular property. We can go ahead and we can go into show reports. And we can check to see how our numbers are looking for this particular case. And if we go into our property reports, you see that I am a little bit off in the first year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to see if I can just double check my work and make sure that everything was entered in correctly. And so since I'm first off at my potential base rent, it has to be something that's coming from either here, the rent roll, or from my market leasing profile. So I'm going to start here with my tenant rent roll and just make sure that everything was entered in correctly. We know that the area was entered in correctly, so I'm going to double check the dates just to be sure. So we have Rainforest is January 1st, 2016 with an end of December 31st, 2019. January or September 1st to September 30th of 2018. We have Mrs. Estrell. They are November 1st, 2014 to October 31st, 2019. Then we have our Cobain, and they are July 1st of 2014 to June 30th of 2023. Okay, those all look good. Let's make sure that the base rents are all correct. And so we have $16, we have $15, we have 21, 21, and 30,000 per year. So those look right. We do want to double check our fixed steps. So again, Cobain has a 4% fixed step increase each lease year anniversary. So Cobain percent increase 4%. We can double check that by looking at this ellipses and saying, okay, yep, they have a fixed step every single year on the lease year anniversary. Okay, then we want to double check our percentage rent. So this is coming from Estrella, and this is going to be 5% of 50,000 in annual sales over the natural breakpoint. Okay, was there anything else that we missed? We have our recovery structures, stop amount per area 475, stop amount per area 450, CAM, none, and CAM. Okay, then we have the market percent reabsorption, so the renewal probability. We have 50%, 50%, 75%, 50% for our roof, and 75% for Estrell. So those are all correct. So now we want to go and we want to look at our market leasing profile to make sure that all of that information was also entered correctly. So I'm going to get back into the market leasing, and we're going to double check those numbers. So for our 5-year market, we said 5 years, 50% renewal, 4 months vacant, $18.50 for base, $18 for renew with a 3% increase base step. Now, we want to make sure that percentage rent stays at none. So let's just double check that that is staying at none. Percent rent. Okay, so we do want to change all of these to none. We don't want percent rents to be included. So that could have been the mistake. Let's double check and we can get back into our calculations to see if that was where the mistake lied. So we still seem to be off a little bit. And a lot of it has to do with the first year base rent. And so I'm going to pull up my audit report and I'm going to try to see if I can understand exactly where the mistake is. And so this should be really helpful if you are struggling and you can't figure out exactly where the mistake is. This is how you would go and identify where that mistake could have been had. So I'm going to pull up the lease audit report for this particular assignment and compare it to ours. So it looks as though we are off for Brauburn Associates. So let's get back into our tenant tab and just double check Brauburn, because that's going to be where things start to go astray. And if we are looking at this as January 1st of 2018 to December 21st, 2018, what's important to note is that this particular tenant expires at the end of September. So October, November, and December should be vacant months. So we just want to make sure that that is the case. And so again, we've double checked how much rent they are receiving. And we want to make sure they are on the 5-year market leasing profile, and that market leasing profile is accurate and has the 50% renewal 4 months vacant. So after doing a little digging, what I found out was that I had accidentally put in the wrong area size for Brauburn Associates, and that fixed our numbers. So if you scroll down, you should now see that the potential base rents start at 540,000. Total rental revenue goes all the way here to 4,673,920. The only other thing that was slightly off were our tenant recovery structures, and only in this year. So if you do find that you have an error or a mistake and it's only in 1 year, again, try to find the answer that is the closest. I hope that this helped in your studying, and best of luck on the exam.